At the family dinner, my daughter-in-law came up to me and whispered, "I'm pregnant with your husband's baby, you bitter old hag." I laughed out loud and said, "Don't worry, dear." Weeks later, I gave her a surprise that changed everything. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story from. I want to know how far it's traveled. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Caroline and I'm 68 years old. I've been married to my husband Victor for 45 wonderful years. We live in a small apartment above our family bakery on Main Street, where Victor bakes the most delicious bread you've ever tasted. Our son Nathan is 35 years old and works as a teacher at the local school. He's always been such a good boy, helping others and making us proud every single day. 3 years ago, Nathan married a woman named Cassandra. She's 26 years old with long red hair and bright blue eyes that seem to see everything. From the very first day I met her, something felt wrong. She would smile at me, but her eyes stayed cold like winter ice. She talked sweetly, but I could hear something mean hiding behind her words. Cassandra always wanted expensive things and complained when she didn't get them. Last month, we planned a special family dinner to celebrate Nathan's birthday. I spent all day cooking his favorite foods, fried chicken mashed potatoes, and chocolate cake with vanilla frosting. The dining room looked perfect with my best plates and fresh bread from Victor's bakery. When they arrived, Cassandra wore a fancy dress that probably cost more than my grocery money for a whole month. She kept touching her stomach and smiling in a way that made me feel uncomfortable. During dinner, she barely ate anything and kept staring at Victor with strange looks. Nathan was so happy talking about his students and sharing funny stories from school. Victor seemed nervous, which was odd because he's usually so relaxed during family dinners. He kept looking at his plate and wouldn't meet my eyes. I asked him if everything was okay, but he just said he was tired from working the morning shift at the bakery. Something was definitely wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. Cassandra suddenly stood up and said she had big news to share with everyone. Nathan's face lit up with excitement as she announced that she was going to have a baby. He jumped up and hugged her so tight, spinning her around the dining room while laughing with pure joy. I should have been thrilled to become a grandmother, but something in Cassandra's eyes made me feel scared instead of happy. She was watching Victor's face very carefully, like she was waiting for some kind of reaction from him. When Nathan put her down, he ran over to hug me and Victor, saying we were going to be the best grandparents in the whole world. His happiness was so real and pure that it made my heart feel warm and sad at the same time. After we finished eating dessert and Nathan was washing dishes in the kitchen, Cassandra walked over to where I was sitting. She leaned down close to my ear like she wanted to tell me a secret. What she whispered made my blood turn cold and my hands start shaking. "I'm pregnant with your husband's baby, you bitter old hag." She hissed so quietly that only I could hear. The words hit me like a slap across the face, but something inside me refused to believe it. Instead of crying or getting angry, I started laughing. Not because it was funny, but because I knew in my heart that my Victor would never ever do such a terrible thing to our family. "Don't worry, dear," I said back to her, keeping my voice calm and steady. "Everything will work out just fine." Cassandra looked confused because she expected me to scream or cry or make a big scene. She wanted drama and tears, but I gave her nothing but a gentle smile. I could see the anger flash in her blue eyes because her mean plan wasn't working the way she wanted it to. When Nathan came back from the kitchen, he found us both smiling, and he looked so happy that his wife and mother were getting along well. He had no idea that his world was about to be turned upside down. After they left that night, I sat Victor down at our kitchen table and asked him to tell me the truth about what was happening. His face went white as a sheet, and his hands started trembling, just like mine had earlier. "Caroline," he said in a voice so quiet I could barely hear him, "I swear on my mother's grave that I have never touched that woman, but she's been threatening me for months, saying she'll tell Nathan that I tried to kiss her if I don't give her money." My heart broke for my poor husband, who had been carrying this terrible secret all by himself. Victor told me that Cassandra had been coming to our bakery when I was at my book club meetings asking for help with marriage problems. She would cry fake tears and say that Nathan wasn't giving her enough attention or money. Then she started asking Victor for cash, saying she needed it for emergency doctor visits that Nathan didn't know about. When Victor said no, she threatened to lie to Nathan and say that Victor had been inappropriate with her. She knew that even a false accusation would destroy our family and Victor's reputation in our small town. My poor husband had been giving her money just to keep her quiet and protect our son from heartbreak. "How much money have you given her?" I asked, though I was afraid to hear the answer. Victor hung his head in shame and whispered, "Almost $10,000 from our savings account." $10,000. That was money we had saved for years, planning to use it for a special trip to visit the places we dreamed about when we were young. But Victor had given it all away to protect our family from Cassandra's evil lies. I reached across the table and took his shaking hands in mine. "We're going to fix this," I told him firmly. "But we need to be very careful and very smart about how we do it." That night, I lay awake thinking about Cassandra's claim that she was pregnant with Victor's baby. If she was really going to try to destroy our family with this lie, she would need some kind of proof to make people believe her. In today's world, everyone knows about DNA tests that can prove who a baby's real father is. If Cassandra was smart enough to blackmail my husband, she was probably smart enough to have a backup plan for her lies. The next morning, I called my sister Helen, who works at the hospital downtown. Helen has always been good at finding out information, and I needed her help to solve this puzzle. "Helen," I said when she answered the phone, "I need you to do me a huge favor, but you can't ask me any questions about why." Helen laughed and said, "Caroline, we've been sisters for 68 years. Of course I'll help you with whatever you need." I asked her to find out if Cassandra had been to any doctors in town for pregnancy tests or appointments. Helen said she would check around quietly and call me back later. While I waited for Helen's call, I decided to do some detective work of my own. That night after the family dinner, I couldn't sleep. Victor's confession kept echoing in my head like a drumbeat. I couldn't escape. Cassandra had been blackmailing my husband. $10,000, our dream savings, the money we had set aside for our anniversary trip, was gone. My heart pounded in my chest. I lay awake staring at the ceiling of our small apartment above the bakery, every shadow on the wall looking like a secret waiting to be revealed. Suspicion burned inside me so fiercely, it felt like fire. Cassandra wasn't just lying, she was plotting something bigger. And I knew if I didn't uncover the truth soon, my whole family could be destroyed. I thought of Nathan, my boy, my only child. He was so proud that night, hugging us, spinning Cassandra around with joy when she announced her pregnancy. His laughter had been pure and innocent, and yet I had seen the cold calculation in Cassandra's eyes. She wasn't celebrating life. She was measuring her power over us. I whispered into the darkness, "No more lies. I will find out what you're really doing." The next morning, I called my sister Helen, who worked at the hospital. You've already heard how Helen promised to help me quietly. By noon, she called back with troubling news. Cassandra hadn't been to any local doctors, but someone had spotted her at the pharmacy buying a pregnancy test with a tall, thin man with a dark beard. That was the moment suspicion turned into certainty. Cassandra wasn't just playing a cruel game with my husband. She had an accomplice, a partner in her lies. I felt my blood surge with determination. It wasn't enough to protect Victor anymore. I had to protect Nathan, our family name, and even the bakery that had kept us afloat for decades. Cassandra was like a rot creeping into every corner of our lives, and I was done letting her spread. That afternoon, I set about my own investigation. Victor had gone downstairs to tend to the bread, and I stayed upstairs watching the street from our window above the shop. Main Street bustled with people, neighbors heading to the post office, kids with ice cream cones, men tipping their hats as they strolled by. And then I saw her, Cassandra. She wasn't alone. She stood on the corner near the hardware store, her red hair catching the sunlight like a flame. Beside her was the tall, bearded man Helen had described. He leaned in close, whispering something, and she laughed a sharp, cruel laugh I had never heard in our home. My stomach turned cold. For 20 minutes, I watched as they spoke, exchanged papers, and then slipped into a car together. That was my proof. Cassandra wasn't just manipulating us, she was conspiring. But conspiring to do what? That night at dinner, I acted as if nothing was wrong. Nathan came over full of stories about his students, his face lighting up as he talked. Cassandra sat there smiling sweetly, her hand resting dramatically on her belly. She played her part well, but I kept seeing her on that street corner with the strange man, and it made my skin crawl. When Nathan stepped into the kitchen to pour more tea, I leaned across the table and looked Cassandra straight in the eye. "Tell me," I said softly, "have you been feeling tired these days?" She blinked. Of course that comes with pregnancy. I smiled, but my eyes didn't. Yes, I remember. But I also remember my doctor visits. Funny. The clinic said they haven't seen you. For just a second, her eyes widened before she recovered and flashed a cold smile. "Maybe you should mind your own business, Caroline." I leaned back, folding my hands. "Oh, this is my business, dear, every inch of it." Her smile faltered, and I knew I had struck a nerve. Later that evening, after they left, I pulled out a notebook and began writing everything I knew. Cassandra demanded money from Victor. She carried pregnancy tests with conflicting dates. She was seen with another man. She lied about medical visits. Each note felt like a brick in the wall of evidence I was building. I didn't just want to confront Cassandra. I wanted to expose her so thoroughly that she could never worm her way back into Nathan's life again. The suspicion inside me wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was a burning need, a hunger to see justice done. But how? How could I pull the mask off this woman without shattering Nathan's heart in the process? I prayed about it sitting in the quiet of our bakery kitchen long after midnight, the smell of fresh bread still in the air. And then an idea came to me, one bold enough to work but dangerous enough to backfire. If Cassandra had a secret partner, maybe I could smoke him out. I would leave a trail, a bait, something she couldn't resist following. The next morning, I spoke quietly to Victor. "I'm going to set a trap, but I need you to trust me and I need you to act normal. No more shaking hands, no more nervous glances. If she thinks we suspect her, she'll slip away." Victor looked at me with worry, but he nodded. "Caroline, I'll do whatever it takes." I squeezed his hand. "Good, because I'm not letting that woman ruin our son's life." That week, I started dropping little hints when Cassandra came by. "Victor's been going over our finances," I said casually. "We may have more tucked away than we thought." Her eyes gleamed just for a second before she looked away. Another day, I mentioned Nathan's birthday money from his grandparents is still safe in the shop's strongbox. I saw the way she shifted in her chair, restless, calculating. The bait was working. What I didn't know yet was whether she'd take it alone or whether that bearded stranger would show up again. By the end of the week, my suspicions had grown into something undeniable. Cassandra wasn't just lying about a pregnancy. She was plotting a full-blown scam against our family, and I, Caroline, was the only one standing in her way. I knew the time was coming when I'd have to lay my cards on the table, but I also knew I couldn't do it alone. That's when I decided Nathan had to know. He had to see what his wife truly was. So here I am sharing this with you, dear listener. I've told you how it began with Cassandra's cruel whisper, with Victor's trembling confession, with my burning suspicion, and now you know how my determination grew into a fierce desire to expose her no matter what it took. But let me ask you something. If you were in my place, would you stay silent to keep the peace, or would you gather the proof and confront Cassandra, head on, press 0 if you think I should keep quiet? Press 1 if you think I should expose her now, because the choice I made next would change everything. The day I decided Nathan needed to know, my hands shook as I poured the coffee into his cup. He sat across from me in our bakery kitchen, looking tired, his shoulders heavy from carrying burdens he hadn't yet named. The scent of warm bread filled the room, but there was no comfort in it. My son's eyes told me the truth. Something inside him was already breaking. Mom, Nathan whispered as if afraid of his own words. I don't know what's happening to Cassandra. She's shutting me out. She won't let me go to the doctor with her. She snaps at me when I ask about the baby. And last night, his voice cracked. Last night I found birth control pills hidden in her drawer. I felt my chest tighten. He had seen it himself. The mask was slipping. I reached across the table, touched his hand, and spoke gently. Nathan, I need you to see something. I showed him the pictures I had taken of Cassandra's purse, the pregnancy tests with dates that didn't match the strange medical letter, the notes about symptoms she barely understood. His face paled as he scrolled through the images. Each picture was another blade cutting into him. I watched as disbelief gave way to anguish. No, he whispered. No, Mom. This can't be true. She told me she swore. His voice broke completely, and he pressed his hand against his forehead. How could she do this to me, to us? I wanted to gather him in my arms like when he was a boy, to shield him from this cruel storm. But Nathan wasn't a child anymore. He was a man watching the foundation of his marriage crumble beneath his feet. That night, Nathan couldn't sleep. He told me later that he sat awake in the darkness, listening to Cassandra's soft breathing beside him, wondering how many of her words had been lies. He stared at the ceiling, feeling like a stranger in his own home. And then, unable to bear it any longer, he made a decision he would follow her. The next evening, Nathan told Cassandra he had extra grading to do at school. She kissed his cheek lightly and told him not to wait up. But instead of going to his classroom, Nathan parked his car down the street and waited. He watched as Cassandra stepped out of the house, her hair shining in the lamplight, her hand resting dramatically on her stomach. But she wasn't alone for long. A tall man with a beard, the same one Helen and I had seen, appeared out of the shadows. Cassandra's smile widened warmer than anything she gave Nathan anymore. She slipped her arm through the man's and walked with him down Main Street, laughing softly. Nathan's hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. His heart raced, his vision blurred. He told me later that the moment felt like a knife twisting in his chest. He had suspected betrayal, but seeing it with his own eyes was different. It was final. It was devastating. They stopped outside. A cafe sat together in the back corner and leaned close. Nathan couldn't hear the words, but he saw Cassandra pass a small envelope across the table. The man nodded, tucked it into his jacket, and kissed her hand. That was the breaking point. Nathan drove home in silence, every mile filled with rage and grief. He couldn't even cry. The pain was too deep for tears. When he walked into our apartment above the bakery later that night, he looked 10 years older. His face was hollow, his eyes shadowed. "Mom," he said quietly, "I saw her. I saw her with him. I didn't need to ask who. She laughed with him." Nathan continued, his voice trembling. "She gave him something in an envelope. She looked at him the way she used to look at me." He covered his face with his hands. "I'm such a fool." My heart shattered right alongside his. I moved to his side, wrapping my arms around his shoulders. "No, Nathan, you're not a fool. You loved her. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human." He shook his head. "I don't know what's real anymore. Was any of it real, Mom? Our wedding vows, the way she held me, the plans we made, I didn't have an easy answer. Sometimes the worst betrayal isn't just the lie itself, it's the way it poisons every memory, every moment that once felt safe. Nathan's trust had collapsed like a house of cards, and all I could do was hold him as he broke. The next morning, Nathan sat with Victor and me at the bakery table. He looked exhausted, but there was a new resolve in his eyes. "I can't pretend anymore," he said firmly. "She's not the woman I thought she was. She's been lying, manipulating, maybe even stealing. And now I know she has someone else. I won't let her destroy us any further." Victor nodded, his face lined with sorrow. "Son, I should have told you sooner. I didn't want to hurt you." Nathan shook his head. "Dad, you were trying to protect me. But now I see the truth with my own eyes, and I can't unsee it." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of broken trust. That weekend, Nathan moved into our apartment for a few days. Cassandra raged when he told her he needed space, accusing him of betrayal, turning the tables as manipulators often do. But Nathan didn't answer. He packed a small bag and walked away, leaving her screaming in the doorway. That night, he sat with us in the quiet bakery kitchen, sipping coffee, staring into his cup. "I feel empty," he admitted. "Like everything I believed in has been ripped away. How do you start again when the ground beneath you is gone?" I reached across the table, placing my hand over his. "You start with truth, Nathan, and you let the truth guide you out of the darkness. Friends, maybe you felt that way too, watching trust collapse in front of your eyes, feeling your heart torn into pieces you're not sure can ever be put back together. I know my son's pain was raw, and I know many of you listening have carried that same pain in your own families. But I also know this truth, once uncovered, becomes the first stone in rebuilding. If you've followed this far, you can feel the heartbreak in Nathan's journey, the love that turned to ashes, the trust that collapsed like shattered glass. And maybe you felt the sting of betrayal too. If this story touches you, I'd be grateful if you tap the like button below. It helps us share more stories of truth, courage, and family. And let me leave you with a question. Have you ever discovered a lie so big it broke your trust completely? How did you begin to heal? The bakery kitchen had never felt so heavy with silence. Nathan sat at the table, his hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold long ago. Victor stood near the oven, staring at the loaves inside, as if they held answers none of us could find. And I felt the walls pressing in the air so thick it nearly choked me. This wasn't just a family crisis anymore. It was war, and the battlefield was our home. Nathan finally broke the silence. "Mom, Dad, we can't just sit here. Cassandra is lying about a pregnancy she's been blackmailing Dad, and now she's sneaking around with another man. If we don't do something soon, she's going to ruin everything." His voice trembled, but his eyes were sharp with resolve. For the first time in days, I saw not just my broken son, but a man ready to fight for the truth. I leaned forward, my own heart pounding. Then we set a trap. We make her reveal herself. Victor turned his face pale. "Caroline, that's dangerous. Cassandra is clever and she's desperate. People do reckless things when they're cornered." He was right, and the fear in his voice only made the air feel heavier. But I knew there was no turning back. "She has cornered us first," I said firmly. "It's our turn to push back." The next day, I began laying the groundwork. Cassandra came by, her smile as polished as ever, her hand brushing her stomach as if she were carrying the most delicate treasure in the world. Nathan avoided her gaze, playing the part of a weary husband too tired to argue. But I watched her every move, every glance, and that was when I noticed something new. Her purse looked thicker than usual, bulging with papers. When she excused herself to the restroom, I took the risk. My hands shook as I opened the bag, my heart beating so loud I feared Victor would hear it downstairs. Inside, I found something that froze my blood, a stack of documents, half-completed forms that looked like bank withdrawal slips, with Victor's name scribbled across the top. There was also a piece of paper that looked disturbingly like a draft of a will, written in shaky handwriting, meant to mimic his. I snapped a picture with my phone, then tucked everything back exactly as I found it. When Cassandra returned, she looked at me with those icy blue eyes. For just a second, I wondered if she could smell the truth on me, if she knew I had seen too much. "Everything all right, Caroline?" she asked sweetly. I forced a smile. "Just fine, dear, just fine." But inside my stomach turned. Cassandra wasn't only lying about a baby. She was preparing to steal from us, maybe even frame Victor to make her story stick. The tension had gone from unbearable to nearly lethal. That night, I showed Nathan the pictures. His jaw tightened as he scrolled through them. "She's forging Dad's signature," he said, his voice low and furious. "She's planning something bigger than I imagined." Victor sank into his chair, his hands trembling. "If she succeeds, Our reputation, our savings, our bakery, everything could be destroyed. Nathan slammed his fist on the table. Then we catch her in the act. We make sure she has no escape. We planned carefully. Every word, every move had to be deliberate. Nathan would hide in the workshop where he could hear everything. Victor and I would confront Cassandra at lunch, slowly drawing her into the open, guiding her lies until she trapped herself. But as we rehearsed what we would say, my chest tightened with fear. It felt like we were walking a tightrope across a canyon, every step trembling, one slip away from disaster. Would Cassandra take the bait, or would she see through us and strike first? Saturday came, and the tension in the air was so sharp it cut through every sound. Even the bell above the bakery door seemed louder when it rang, announcing Cassandra's arrival. She breezed in, wearing another expensive dress, smiling as though nothing was wrong. Caroline Victor. "What a lovely day for lunch," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I forced a smile, motioning her to the table. My palms were damp, my throat dry. Every second felt stretched thin like glass about to shatter. As we ate, I tried to keep my voice steady. "Cassandra, dear, I've been thinking about what you told me at Nathan's birthday dinner." Her fork paused in midair. "What do you mean?" I leaned back, feigning calm. "About being pregnant with Victor's child." The room went still. Victor stared at his plate, his knuckles white. Cassandra's body stiffened, though she tried to hide it with a brittle laugh. "Oh, Caroline, you must have misunderstood." "No," I interrupted gently, keeping my eyes locked on hers. "I didn't misunderstand. And I think we need to be practical. If this child truly is Victor's, we'll need proof. A DNA test." Her face drained of color. "That won't be necessary. Everyone will see the truth when the baby arrives." I shook my head. "No, dear. These days, people don't just take someone's word for it. They want evidence. And I've already spoken to the clinic. They're ready to take a sample today." The air grew heavier than I thought possible. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, pounding like a drum. Cassandra stood abruptly, knocking over her water glass. "I don't have time for this. I have plans." But before she could move another step, Nathan stepped out from the workshop. The sight of him froze Cassandra in place. "Hello, Cassandra," he said, his voice hard, unrecognizable. "I think you should sit back down." The tension snapped like a whip, filling every corner of the room. For the first time, Cassandra looked trapped, her icy confidence melting into panic. What happened next would decide everything. But in that moment, standing there with Nathan at my side and Victor trembling nearby, I felt like we were balanced on the very edge of a cliff. One push, one misstep, and all of us could tumble into ruin. My breath caught in my chest. This was the point of no return. Friends, can you feel that tension? That sharp edge where every word might tip the scale toward truth or toward disaster. That was the place we stood in that bakery kitchen, our family's future hanging in the balance. And I wonder, as you listen to this part of the story, does the voice telling it draw you in? Does it carry the suspense you feel in your own chest? Press 0 if you think this voice doesn't sound engaging. Press 1 if you feel it, pulls you in deeply, and makes you want to hear more. Because the story isn't over yet. The hardest part is still to come. Cassandra's face turned pale when Nathan stepped out from the workshop, his voice cold, his eyes steady. For the first time, the mask she wore so easily began to slip. "Nathan," she stammered, "what are you doing here? What am I doing here?" He shot back his words, sharp as steel. "The better question is, what are you doing, Cassandra, lying to me? Blackmailing my father, forging his signature, sneaking around with another man. Tell me, which lie do you want to explain first?" The air inside that small bakery kitchen cracked like lightning. Victor gripped the edge of the table, his face trembling with shame and anger. I sat frozen, my hands tight around my chair, praying my son's strength would hold. Cassandra tried to recover her calm. She forced a laugh, high and brittle. "Nathan, darling, you're confused. Your parents have been filling your head with nonsense. They've always resented me. They never wanted me in this family." Nathan's eyes burned. "Don't you dare twist this. I saw you with him with that man in town. I saw you hand him an envelope. Was that more of our money?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She had no answer, and Nathan pressed harder. "You lied to me about a child, Cassandra. You lied to me about everything. And now—" His voice broke like thunder, raw with pain and rage. "Now you've broken the last piece of trust I had left." Victor slammed his fist on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. $10,000, Cassandra. You drained our savings with your threats. You made me lie to my wife. You tried to destroy the one thing I hold sacred, my marriage. And for what? For greed, for lies. His fury filled the room, heavy and shaking. Cassandra flinched under his words, her bravado crumbling. But then with sudden desperation, she grabbed her phone from her purse. "If you're going to gang up on me, then fine. Let's see what the police have to say about your precious Victor. I'll tell them everything that he touched me, that he harassed me, that you're covering for him now." The words hit like a thunderclap. My blood ran cold. This was her last weapon, an accusation so vile it could shatter everything in one blow. Nathan's voice rose fierce and unshakable. "Go ahead, Cassandra. Call them, because we've got evidence. The pregnancy tests with dates that don't match. The forged documents with Dad's name on them. The witness who saw you buying tests with another man. The letter from the clinic. Every single piece of your lies is documented." I pulled out my phone and laid it on the table. "Every photo, every note, it's all here. If you want to involve the police, you'll be the one leaving in handcuffs." The silence that followed was deafening. Cassandra's hand shook the phone, slipping slightly from her fingers. She looked at Nathan, then Victor, then me, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. And then Nathan's voice crashed down like thunder. "Enough. No more lies, Cassandra. The truth is out. You've been exposed." Tears spilled down Cassandra's cheeks, real tears this time, not the polished performance she had used so many times before. Her shoulders shook. Her voice broke. "I was desperate," she whispered. "I owed money to dangerous people. I thought if I pretended to be pregnant, if I blamed Victor, I could buy myself more time. I never meant for it to go this far." Nathan's fury didn't soften. His whole body trembled with rage. "You never meant you destroyed my trust. You humiliated my parents. You stole from us. You looked me in the eye and swore lies into my soul. Don't you dare stand there and say you never meant for this." The words roared out of him, raw and fierce, and I felt the thunder of truth shaking every wall of that kitchen. Victor spoke next, his voice low but powerful, each syllable carrying the weight of betrayal. "Cassandra, you took my honor, my good name, and tried to twist it into filth. You threatened to destroy everything I've built for 45 years. You thought I would stay silent. But silence ends today." Cassandra crumbled into her chair, sobbing openly now. "Please," she begged. "Don't ruin me. Don't call the police. I'll do anything. I'll pay you back. I'll leave town. Just don't destroy me." The fury in Nathan's eyes didn't waver. He pointed toward the door. "You destroyed yourself, Cassandra. We're just finally calling it what it is. Pack your things. You're done here. You're not my wife anymore. You're just another lie I refuse to carry." The finality of his words struck like a bolt of lightning. Cassandra's sobs turned into silence. She looked at each of us one last time, her face streaked with tears, then gathered her purse with shaking hands. As she walked out of the bakery, the bell above the door chimed a hollow sound that felt like thunder, fading in the distance. When the door closed, the three of us sat in stunned silence. The storm had broken, but its echoes still rattled inside us. My hands trembled. My chest ached. Nathan finally slumped into a chair, his face pale, his body exhausted. "I don't even know what to feel," he whispered. Anger, sadness, shame, all of it all at once. I rubbed his back gently. "You feel like a man who has faced the truth. And that Nathan is stronger than any lie she tried to sell you." Victor exhaled shakily, covering his face with his hands. The lies nearly ruined us. But the truth saved us. Dear friends, that night in our little bakery kitchen, the storm of lies crashed down and the thunder of truth shook everything loose. The fury, the heartbreak, the raw explosion of emotions. It was almost too much to bear. But sometimes truth has to roar like thunder before it can set you free. And now I want to ask you something from the heart. When you listen to this story, do you feel the thunder in the voice that carries it? Press 0 if you don't find this narration compelling. Press 1 if you feel the power of the voice makes every moment come alive. Because the storm may have passed, but the journey of rebuilding has only just begun. The bakery was quiet after Cassandra left, but the silence was not peace. It was the silence after a storm, the kind that leaves you trembling, wondering if the thunder will return. Victor sat with his face in his hands. Nathan leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, and I gripped the table so tightly my knuckles ached. She was gone, yes, but I knew in my heart she wasn't finished. People like Cassandra never walk away easily. I wasn't wrong. 2 nights later, as the clock in our apartment ticked past midnight, I heard a sound downstairs. A faint creak, then the soft shuffle of feet on the bakery floor. At first I thought it might be Victor checking the ovens. But when I reached for him beside me, he was still there asleep. My stomach dropped. I nudged Nathan, who had been staying with us since the confrontation. He woke instantly, the instinct of a man whose soul was already raw with betrayal. Together we crept down the narrow stairs, careful not to make a sound. And there she was. Cassandra stood in the darkened bakery, the beam of a flashlight cutting across the counters. She was stuffing jewelry cash and even a few of Victor's tools into a bag. Her face was twisted with determination, her movements frantic. Nathan's voice cut through the shadows like a blade. "What do you think you're doing?" Cassandra spun around, the color draining from her face. For a moment, she looked like a child caught stealing cookies, but then her expression hardened. "I'm taking what I deserve," she hissed. "You can't just throw me out with nothing. I gave years of my life to this family. I'm owed." Nathan stepped forward, his voice firm, unyielding. "What you're owed is nothing but shame. You lied, you stole, you broke every promise you ever made. You are finished here, Cassandra." Her eyes darted wildly between us. "If you call the police, I'll tell them everything, that Victor harassed me, that you all conspired against me." I stepped out from the shadows, then my own fury rising. "You already tried that lie, and it crumbled. We have every piece of evidence we need. You have no power left, Cassandra, none." The air was charged thick with the final strands of her manipulation snapping one by one. Victor, woken by the noise, appeared in the doorway. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. "Leave now. Take nothing that isn't yours. If you ever set foot in this bakery again, I'll make sure the law knows every detail of your schemes." For a moment, Cassandra's mask cracked completely. Her eyes filled with desperation. "Where will I go? I have nothing." Nathan's jaw clenched, but his words were resolute. "That's the life you built, Cassandra. Not us. You made your choices. Now you'll live with them." She looked at us one last time, her chest heaving, and then dropped the bag with a clatter. The jewelry, the cash, the tools all spilled onto the bakery floor. With shaking hands, she grabbed only her purse and fled into the night. The door slammed shut behind her, and the echo of it felt like the final nail in the coffin of her lies. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My knees nearly gave out as relief swept over me like a flood. For months we had lived under Cassandra's shadow, but now it was finished. We were free. The next morning, Nathan filed for divorce. His hands trembled as he signed the papers, but his voice was steady. "She will never control me again." Victor and I stood beside him, proud of his strength, proud of the man he had become through the fire of betrayal. The weeks that followed were not easy. Cassandra tried once more to contact Nathan, begging for another chance, promising she had changed. But Nathan didn't answer. He blocked her number, ignored her letters. "This is my line in the sand," he told me. "She doesn't get another inch of me." It was his declaration of freedom, and it filled me with fierce pride. And as the dust settled, something beautiful began to grow. Nathan started smiling again, not the hollow, broken smile he wore in Cassandra's shadow, but a true one. He poured his heart into teaching, finding joy in his students, in the small victories of everyday life. Victor and I, too, felt the weight lifting. For the first time in months, we sat on our porch at sunset, holding hands without fear pressing between us. We talked about the future again, the trips we might take, the simple joys we might savor. The storm had passed, and though it left scars, it also left us stronger. Dear friends that night when Cassandra tried to steal from us one last time, and we stood firm together, it was more than just the end of her schemes. It was the beginning of our freedom. We had been decisive, we had been resolute, and we had cut every tie she tried to hold over us. It was liberation pure and complete. Sometimes freedom doesn't come with gentle goodbyes. Sometimes it comes with slammed doors, shaking voices, and hard lines drawn in the sand. But when it comes, it is a gift worth everything. As I tell you this now, I wonder, have you ever had to make a decision so final, so absolute, that it set you free? Did it feel like a loss at first, or did it feel like the first breath of air after being held underwater? Think about that. And know that in our little family that night, we finally breathed again. After Cassandra left our lives for good, it took weeks for the storm inside our hearts to quiet. The nights were still long, and Nathan carried shadows under his eyes. Victor and I would sometimes wake in the middle of the night and find him sitting in the bakery kitchen staring into a cup of coffee gone cold. But even in those dark moments, something had shifted. The air in our home was lighter. The chains of blackmail and lies no longer bound us. We had chosen decisiveness, and we had been set free. And in that freedom, hope began to flicker. One Sunday morning, Nathan joined us on the porch as the sun rose over Main Street. The smell of fresh bread drifted from the bakery, and the town stirred awake. For the first time in months, his shoulders looked less heavy. "Mom," he said softly, "I don't want Cassandra's lies to be the last chapter of my life. I want to believe in love again. I want to believe people can be honest." I squeezed his hand. "You will, Nathan. Love isn't the problem. Lies are. And truth, son, truth always finds its way." He nodded slowly as if my words had dropped a seed into his heart. A few months later, Nathan came home with a smile I hadn't seen in years. His eyes were bright, his voice carried warmth. "Mom, Dad," he said almost shyly, "there's someone I want you to meet." Her name was Sarah. She was a teacher at the same school, a kind woman with laughter that filled the room and a steadiness that matched Nathan's. When she walked into our bakery for the first time, she didn't try to impress us with expensive clothes or empty charm. She rolled up her sleeves, asked about the bread, and listened with genuine interest to Victor's stories about baking. It was like a fresh breeze had blown through our home. Sarah and Nathan grew close quickly, but not recklessly. This time, it was built on honesty. They asked each other hard questions. They shared their fears. And Nathan, scarred, but wiser, laid everything bare. Sarah. I once heard him say, his voice trembling, "I was blind before. I loved a woman who wasn't who she said she was. I can't go through that again. Please, tell me you'll always be honest with me." Sarah looked him in the eye, no hesitation in her voice. "Nathan, I can't promise life will always be easy, but I can promise you this: I will never lie to you. Not about the little things, not about the big things. The truth matters too much." Those words were like sunlight breaking through clouds. The following year, in the garden behind our bakery under Victor's roses and the branches of the old oak tree, Nathan and Sarah were married. It wasn't a grand wedding, no glittering chandeliers, no ballroom music, Just family, friends, the scent of roses and vows spoken with sincerity. As they danced together on the grass, Nathan's laughter rang out pure and full. I watched with tears in my eyes, knowing this was the life he deserved. Not lies, not manipulation, but love rooted in truth. A year later, our family welcomed a new life. Little Emma, with Nathan's brown eyes and Sarah's sweet smile, was placed in my arms. I will never forget the warmth of her tiny body against mine, the way her hand curled instinctively around my finger. I thought back to Cassandra's cruel whisper that night at dinner, the false pregnancy she had tried to use as a weapon. And here in my arms was the real miracle, the child born not of lies, but of love. I kissed Emma's forehead and whispered, "You are the proof that truth always wins." Dear friends, as I share this with you, I want you to hear not just a story, but a message. Life will bring storms. People may betray your trust. Lies may shake the ground beneath your feet, but lies never last. Truth is always stronger. Family is always worth fighting for. And hope will carry you into a future brighter than the past. We learned that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most beautiful victories. Cassandra thought she could break us, but instead she made us stronger, closer, more grateful for the love we share. If you're listening to this and you've faced betrayal in your own life, let me tell you this: you can heal. You can start again. And sometimes the ending you feared the most becomes the beginning you needed all along. Today, our home is filled with laughter again. Emma takes her first steps across the bakery floor. Sarah and Nathan bring joy into our Sundays. And Victor and I sit on the porch each evening, hand in hand, thankful for every single day. The thunder of betrayal is behind us. The sunlight of truth is ahead. And in that sunlight, we have found peace. To each of you listening now, thank you. Thank you for walking with us through this journey of lies and truth, heartbreak and healing. If this story touched your heart, I would love to hear from you. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from, and tell me what part of this story spoke to you the most. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories of family resilience and the triumph of truth, please subscribe to our channel. It means the world to us. Finally, don't forget to watch the next videos. Each one carries a piece of life's lessons, a reminder that even in the darkest times, light is never far away. This is Caroline sharing not just a story, but a piece of life. Thank you so much for listening to my story until the very end. This is Auntie May 365 Voice, and I'll see you in the next video.